Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
It's the Maryland Crabs. I'm excited today.
Why do you always sing that?
Because I'm not allowed to sing in my house.
No?
Mm-mm. It's a long-standing rule.
That's a shame.
I don't want to get into it. This is our last mayoral interview today.
It is.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was insightful.
It was interesting because this is why people ask why we do hour-long interviews. I don't think that you can really get someone to loosen up till they're 10, 15, 20 minutes into it. And then they start to loosen up. They get a little bit tired, a little mentally tired, and then the truth starts coming out.
I'll tell you, we've got an interview coming up with County Executive Steve Shue, and that perfectly illustrates your point.
Right,
on that.
Because we were on the clock.
We had a tight schedule because he had to be someplace with like the governor or something, some kind of a bullshit excuse to get out. But it was, but no.
You know what? You're not going to book guests anymore.
But you're absolutely right, though. It took 20 minutes before he like loosened the tie and he was doing shots,
and then they hustled him out,
and then he had to leave. It was horrible.
Yeah. So,
but actually, that was also a good interview, as all of them are.
Yeah, it was good.
Last week with Mayor Mike Pantelides, and I was listening to it for the first time when I listened to it on my phone because I subscribe to the Maryland.
You have to subscribe, John. You have to.
I was walking my circles at the Pitt Moyer Rec Center, and all of a sudden my phone went bling. You've got a new episode because I hadn't heard the Mike Pantelides.
You have a stupid sounding phone.
Yeah, well. Because when I did do the editing, you did most of the editing, but when I put it together, I didn't listen really to him because I was tight for time. So it was really fascinating to sit there and listen to him. And he really threw down the gauntlet to Crystal Spring, didn't he?
Well, I think he's making some bold moves. I think everyone's making some bold moves in this one that I really find interesting. So he is putting a line down where he stands as far as the issues, and I think there's no gray area there. So Crystal Spring is going to be one of those battlegrounds for him, and it was last time too. So if it worked the first time.
Sure, it won for him last time.
Isn't it funny? Crystal Spring's been going on so long that it is affecting two separate mayoral elections.
It's almost like the Market House.
And you had some thoughts about that last week in your at&nbsp rant.
I did. Some called it an epic rant on the Annapolis Daily News Brief. If you want to check that out, it would have been on Thursday, September 7th.
So last week, right? Last Thursday.
About the Market House and the city's...
You have a dim view towards the way the city has handled everything.
I figured we pissed off all the restaurants, pissed off all the politicians, that'll be fine too. But yeah, I thought Mike was very strong, and I had a conversation with an alderman who was wondering whether that was going to help him or hurt him in the election. And I can see both sides of it. He could obviously play to the people that are opposed to Crystal Springs, and that could help him very much. Or it could hurt him because he played that card the last time.
Yeah, but I think if you look at how it's broken down by ward and who is the most involved in city politics, I mean, stereotypically, and I'm making a broad statement here, I think Ward 1 is going to be, and Ward 8 are probably the wards that are most involved in the politics of the city.
And they're going to have the higher turnouts.
They're going to have the higher turnouts. And they don't really care that much about Crystal Spring. I think that Eastport is more tied up in their own development issues. So it's going to affect more the people in Ward 5 and 7. I think if that's the case, they don't vote in the percentages that I think the other wards do. I'd have to look at those numbers again. So for him to oppose Crystal Spring, there's no downside to that for him. I just don't think there's a downside for him to oppose it. It worked last time. It's going to work this time.
Right.
I think the Eastport one might be a little stickier.
Well, I think all of the interviews with the mayors were very, very good. I think Gavin certainly is the idea candidate. He's the one that's the change.
Do you know what happened right there? By the way, I started an argument with, and then I disproved my own premise, and then I confused myself and just rambled on.
That's not happen. That's not hard to do.
No. I just halfway through, I'm like, no, wait, that theory is totally wrong. So forget what I just said. I'm not going to even edit that because I'm too lazy.
But
Gavin, sorry.
And Nevin had some very salient, very solid points.
I like Nevin. Nevin is that dark horse that came out of nowhere, and I really like his thought process. He's a very thoughtful guy. I think the way he communicates may not be as polished as the other three, but I think that his ideas are really, really interesting. And since he's so nakedly involved on social media, in that he's not putting out someone handling his social media, or it's not part of the campaign. When he comments on something, it's him, and he's very honest about it. So if you go into the eSport forum,
I think he's real, and I think he's honest.
Right.
Whether you agree with his beliefs or thoughts is a different story. And he's not toting any party line at all.
No.
I mean, he went and testified before the county council last week and called for the resignation of Michael Perutka, which has been the surge group that has been calling for that as well because of his association with League of the South.
I guess. And I don't want to go off on a side rant here, but I mean, if we elect somebody and everyone knows everything, they know all that about a candidate when he's elected, at that point, then what's the point of having them step down? He was elected when people knew about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there you are.
Yeah, it's not something that came to light just yesterday, so that's kind of interesting. But before we get into our final candidate, which is State Senator John Astle, who will be here in just a few moments, make sure that you do subscribe to the Maryland Crabs, and you can do that on iTunes or Google Play.
Subscribing is important because you can listen to us on the Facebook, you can listen to us on YouTube, but when you subscribe, it's delivered to you every week and you don't miss an episode. Right to your phone.
Right. You can go to theMarylandCrabs.com and the episodes are there. They always will be there for you, but the subscription really works. Leave a review, leave us a couple stars if you'd like.
A couple.
Definitely check out the Annapolis Daily News Brief, which is something I launched September 1st.
You did. I'm so proud of you. He's worked so hard on that, and it's his little news brief.
Yeah.
He goes, "What do you think?" And I'll make a suggestion, and he goes, "I don't think so." I'm like, "Okay."
Well, I heard Scott McMullen is, who's always one real quick with the criticisms
of the Annapolis podcast. Yep.
And great podcast, but he's always quick with the criticism. He says, "This needs to be done during drive time." I'm like, "Well, fine. Hire me a producer, and we'll get it done. We'll get it done in drive time."
You guys are all early risers. I'm not, so I can't do it. But it's but the ones I listen to are like 8, 9, 10 minutes. So it just gives you kind of the brief for the day.
Yeah, it's about 10 minutes at most.
What's it called again? That's the Annapolis.
It's called the Annapolis Daily News Brief. It's not real original.
I like it.
It is posted up on annapolis.net. Obviously, it's on
subscribe, like
Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. It'll come right to your phone. But yeah, if you need to find us here, and we're still looking for suggestions of people to talk to and topics to cover here at the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
We've gotten a few really good ones, a few questionable ones, people.
And this is exciting, though, because once we get this election crap out of the way.
By the way, Frank Zapp is dead, so thanks for the suggestion. But,
I did see that one. Yeah. But yeah, so keep sending them in. You can send them into info@themarylandcrabs.com. You can contact us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast, Facebook, the Maryland Crabs Podcast. We've got a page and a group. And that's pretty much all the ways you can contact us.
You're still resisting Instagram, which actually I started talking you into it, but then I would have to set it up, and I just don't want to do that. So.
Yeah, we know how you do on setup. But all right, well, let's pay some bills and let's talk to Senator Astle. What do you think?
When you're a community bank, you help your community however you can. Like being there for local business people, backing them up when they start up, advising them when they ask, standing by them so they can grow. Helping local businesses is one of the most important things we do at Severn Bank. I'm Alan Hyatt, chairman of the bank, but I'm also a proud supporter of businesses in Anne Arundel County. You know we never forget that here at the bank, we're a local business too. We face the same challenges and opportunities as any business, and we know how fortunate we are to have customers who stand beside us. That's why we stand beside you. If you have a business or you want to start a business, talk with us, because we're banking on you. Severn Bank, here with you.
Online at severnbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Severn Bank is a trade name used by Severn Savings Bank.
Hi, this is Tyler from Mountain Wolf. Tickets on sale now for Amps and Ales Music and Craft Beer Festival. Live music from noon to 8. 7 bands including People's Blues of Richmond, Higher Hands, Mountain Wolf, Def Scene, and so much more. Amps and Ales features 27 of the finest craft breweries in the nation. We'll be pouring Flying Dog, Heavy Seas, Jailbreak, and many more, plus games, shopping, and ballpark eats. Saturday, September 16th at Prince George's Stadium. Tickets at ampsandales.com. That's ampsandales.com.
And we are here with State Senator John Astle again, who actually earned his twofer badge today. This is the second time you've been on our podcast.
Oh, well, do I get like a certificate?
We'll mail that.
It's in the mail.
Okay.
It's in the mail. And I expect to see it hanging on the wall of some of your office should you win.
In an appropriate place. I'll ensure that.
So whenever anyone uses the bathroom,
take down one of the deadheads.
No, the deadheads are gone. I told you the last time. They're gone. They found a new home.
They're up in the mountains, right?
Yep.
Oh, the stuffed heads. I thought you were like a Grateful Dead fan. I'm like, you don't look like
No, I don't look like one.
We could talk about Bertha.
Well, let's get into it. Talk a little bit about your campaign. And you're running for mayor of Annapolis. You've been running unofficially since late 2016. You declared, I think, early in 2017.
I did.
Like March, right after, sort of shortly.
Well, I didn't officially declare until after the session was over, which was in April.
One of the things that you talked about the last time we were here was sort of a regiment. And one thing that sort of impressed me is that you said that you would have a meeting once a week or at a certain interval and say, hey, okay, what are you working on and how do we get you from point A to point B? And
it's bringing a discipline to the process.
Sure.
So I think that's something that any municipal city government does lack, is there's going to be everyone's criticism is saying that they're not efficient. And that's the complaint with government in general. And why can't we run government like a business? And the reason being because it's not a business.
You can't run government like a business.
No.
I mean, we know that. I mean, we hear candidates say that all the time. I'm going to run it like a business. But the truth is government's different. The processes are different. But one thing that is the same, I think, in both arenas is communication. You have to communicate in order to get anything done. And I think that's one of the failings we have in the city now, that the council is not included on a lot of these issues on the front side. I learned in the legislature a long time ago that if you're going to build a coalition to get an issue passed, you need the votes. And to get the votes, you need to communicate to the people who are going to be expected to cast those votes. And you bring them in at the very beginning, because compromise is the answer. So you lay an issue out and somebody says, I kind of like that, but I'm a little uncomfortable, and if I can, we get a little tweak here. Okay. So you finally come to where you got to be, and then you got everybody on board, and the bill comes out, and boom, it passes.
So let me throw a hypothetical out at you. So we're talking about a process that is broken down in city council. There's always been a adversarial positioning between the mayor and the council, and like I said before, that's pretty much by design. That's good check and balance. I mean, not hostile, but you're going to have that push and pull, and you really should. But there's times where, as mayor, you're going to have to coalesce around an issue, and you have to be the leader. Let's take the Market House debacle, and we've called that a debacle from a couple months ago, and next week I think they're going to vote on that again, or it'll be a few days ago when people hear this. If you were mayor, there was the RFP, request for proposal, for the Market House. We had 3 groups who responded, and they went through 2 committee meetings, and they brought it to a vote, and the vote was to who we were going to choose that was going to get the RFP. And council kind of hemmed and hawed, and at the end they said, you know what, none of these groups met the criteria at the RFP, so we're going to kick this can down the road. If you were mayor at that point, how would you have handled the whole Market House vote situation?
Well, let's start at the beginning with the RFP. I've heard from a number of experts that the RFP was flawed in the way it was drafted. And so what we got was a flawed result from a flawed RFP. So right now, I'd like to see them just get it over with and get it behind us and move forward. But I'm not sure.
I think they want that now too. I think they regret even bringing it up.
I'm not sure that's going to happen, and I think the next administration is going to have to deal with it. But it's an issue that should have been dealt with a long time ago. It's been festering for far too long, which I might say is the process for a lot of issues in the city. They fester because the city is reluctant to make decisions. Sometimes these decisions are hard, but you got to make them.
Well, we've seen that. I mean, the joke has been that there's some closet down in City Hall somewhere which houses study after study after study after study. It's probably right after the Annapolis 300 medallions that they found.
There's a closet full of those somewhere.
There's lots of studies that just nothing ever really is acted upon them.
And that's not endemic to this particular city council or this administration. This has been going on for a long time, and it probably goes on in other cities, but there's that, once you are elected, there's that hesitancy to act because you're not going to please everybody. So even if they had selected one of the proponents of the RFP, they would have probably got some blowback from a certain amount of people, but that comes with the job.
It comes with the job. In a time that I've been in the General Assembly, there have been issues that I've cast votes on, and I got a lot of blowback. But I cast a vote that I thought was the right vote for the issue at the time. And you have to have the courage to do that. There are people that have said ugly things about me.
John?
Yeah. Well, no decision is the worst decision.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
You can make good decisions, bad decisions, and no decisions.
And that's what we have here. 3 issues where we got no decision.
What would you want to do with the Market House?
Honestly, I'd like to see us start over from scratch. To do an RFP to get the people that know what they're doing, to get an RFP out, and then for the city, and in this case it would be the mayor's leadership, to reach out to businesses around the country that do this sort of thing and know what they're doing. The market house ought to be the center part of the city. I mean, it's right. Look, I see it from my front porch when I come out of the house every morning. It ought to be the place that people come because it's, I won't go in there now. I mean, there's nothing there I need or want. So, absent that, the market house is going to continue to fester.
Well, it's funny. I was talking with Alan Weitzman and Alan Hyatt yesterday, and they were talking about the focal points when you come into the city. Alan Hyatt in Severn Bank has it coming in at Westgate Circle. Alan Weitzman has it sort of off of Northwest Street in that iconic building right on the corner. You've got Market House, and then coming in from Eastport, you've got the Yacht Club, and downtown we've got a little bit of a.
Well, I think the Yacht Club's going to heal itself here within the next year.
Yeah, they're starting to do the construction now and everything else.
Yeah, they got all the permits and the construction's moving forward, and I think this time the city did it right in terms of the permitting and making sure that.
Yeah, they got that done real quick though.
Well, he said if every business could go through the experience as flawlessly as the Yacht Club did, the business would be booming in town.
Well, I'll tell you one difference between that. You say they got their permits pretty quickly, but a difference between the Yacht Club and a business that's coming to Annapolis is the members live here.
Yeah.
They've got a vested interest. The business doesn't. They're looking to locate themselves here.
True. Let's fast forward to December 3rd, 4th, whatever. You've won the race.
Yeah.
You've had the inauguration at Maryland Hall, presumably, or whatnot.
That's the only auditorium we have.
Yeah.
So
for now. What does Mayor Astle do on his first day of office? When does city hours start? Do they start at 7 a.m.?
Well, I'm not sure what they start now, but I think the regular offices should be open 9 to 5 every day. I think the mayor ought to be there earlier. But on day one, the first thing that needs to happen is that meeting that you spoke of earlier, where I get all the department heads and we sit in a room and I say, okay, there's a new deal, and this is how I intend to work with you. I'm going to lay out, I'm going to have these meetings, so I'll make sure that what you have, you don't need anything from you to get what you need done. And then the next Monday, we're going to talk about what you did get done. So there's assignment for certain tasks, but then there's accountability, because if you didn't get done what you told me you were going to do, then I'd like you to explain to me why. And I'm not sure that happens now.
I got intimidated while you were explaining that. He kept pointing at me, and I was getting nervous.
Yeah, the finger. It's not the finger that people think of. It's the index.
It's the mayoral, where is your TPS report finger?
You know the city very well and everything else. So on that first day, are there, I'm not asking for names, but do you have a list in your mind? Are there changes that you want to make on day one, whether it be department heads or structure or whatnot, that you have thoughts about?
No, I'm going to tell you. Have you ever read The Prince by Machiavelli?
Oh, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, I have too. And one of the things that I learned when I read The Prince, you probably didn't realize I was so widely read. One of the things that The Prince says is that when you become the prince, you don't fire all the retainers from the previous prince, because they're going to be just as loyal to you as they were to him. They want to keep their jobs. Okay? And so give it some time, because there could be issues where the personality of the old prince didn't mesh with the personality of his retainers, or one or more of them. And now that situation could be different. So you want to be sure that you're not taking somebody who has the requisite experience to do the job and getting rid of them before you really know their capabilities, and you've not even thought about who you're going to replace them with.
And there's continuity and institutional memory. And I think what you're saying also is that maybe there are people who weren't being used to the best of their potential because there wasn't a condition that was set up for them to be successful.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think you need to take your time in looking at that. In terms of the organization of the mayor's office, again, until I'm actually in the seat, it's hard for me to make a judgment about the organization.
Well, there's 13 department directors right now breathing a sigh of relief, at least for a couple months.
Well, I don't foresee a mass firing.
Right.
It's not. Look, regardless of what direction I'd like to take the city, I'm going to need the expertise of many of those directors. And so the last thing that I would want to do is get rid of them before I had a chance to measure.
Now, that said, we talked a little bit about restructuring. If you look at the actual structure of the city departments, is there anything that you would do to, for example, Mike did some restructuring a little bit that he got some criticism, but I didn't think was a bad idea for what he was doing, because you can consolidate certain departments that are supposed to interact with each other anyway and put it under the same roof. But do you think that the structure of the departments are efficient?
Until I sit in the seat, I'm not going to be able to give you a concrete answer on it. I will tell you that I heard that the council is about to pass a bill that's going to take some of the functions that are now in the mayor's office out of the mayor's office and give them to the city manager. Yeah, Office of Law, the Public Affairs.
So they would report to the city manager, and then the city manager would report to the mayor's office?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. If you have an effective mayor, the mayor's talking to the city manager on a regular basis. The mayor's the interface between the council and the city manager to ensure that, things are working in the right direction.
We've got a lot of capital issues, and you brought this up the last time we spoke. I know you said Main Street was a mess.
Yeah, you thought infrastructure was something that had been neglected for a long time.
Oh, I do.
That's scheduled to be re-bricked and re-stubbed and everything else starting in January. What other capital projects?
If I may, I understand that the money for that's been in place for some time now, but it's been kicked down the road until after the election. Just so you know.
That didn't go unnoticed.
I mean, one of the things that I learned early in life, when you're faced with an issue, you have to make a decision. You make the decision, and then you move forward. I'm going to digress for a moment and just tell you, I gave Josh some advice about Crystal Springs. His first week in office, I took him out to lunch. And I said, Josh, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Deal with this issue right now. It's the first year of your term. Deal with it and put it behind you. So I gave Mike Pantelides the same advice.
and there's an issue that's going to span the end of 2
administration.
terms.
So I'm going to take my own advice when the time comes. But
and we were talking about that before you walked in, saying that Crystal Spring is one of those issues that has now spanned 2 elections. It's been an issue.
Well, it's been longer than that. That thing has been kind of percolating for 27 years.
Has it really?
Yeah. It's recently gotten on the screen, but it's been out there for a long time. And quite honestly, there's so many facts out there. I don't know.
He did the quotey thing with his fingers.
Yeah, I'm quoting with my fingers. It's not fake news. It's just people have their version of what the facts are. I'd like to know what the real facts are before I would move forward.
And last week, Mayor Pantelides said in no uncertain terms that as long as he has anything to say about it, it's not happening.
Well, you know what? Too many of our decisions, development decisions, get decided by judges and not by those who've been elected. And I tell you, that's what will happen. If he tries to shut this whole thing down, it's going to be in court. And you'll have a judge making a decision that should be made by the people who've been elected to represent the community.
And we'll see what happened, because last week, or it'll be 2 weeks by the time everyone hears this, that Crystal Spring, or I guess we should be proper about this, the Village at Providence Point, they submitted yet another, it's probably the 6th or 7th iteration of their plans. And
I've lost count.
Yeah, and it was summarily sent back. So you wonder at what point does it end up in court? And I'm not sure. Do they continue to address the objections of the city when it comes to the plans, or do they say, we're just tired of this, it's never happening?
I would agree with that. But at some point, the decision has to be made, and you got to move forward. So you have to be careful when you make that decision that you've dotted your I's and crossed the T's, or you'll find yourself in court.
Do you think that we need that tax base? We have some financial issues that are going to come to bear at some point. Whether it's 5 years, 10 years, but
let me just say, America. You have property rights, I should say, in America, in the United States. We have property rights. So you own a piece of property. You have the right to develop that to its highest and best use, consistent with existing law. So one of the problems we have now is that existing law is confusing. I talk to developers, talk to architects, talk to builders, and they'll say, look, I get an answer from this person, and then now I get a different answer from this person, and I don't know what the real answer is.
Eastport Landing is a perfect example of that exact thing.
And so at some point, somebody has to take the permitting and the zoning laws and rewrite them to a point so that they're clear and concise and easily understandable, so there's no room for quibbling. It says this, and that's...
One of the things that most of the aldermen that I talked to, and when we did interviews with them, said is that the zoning laws are just so incredibly complex, and that you've had this document that's been plugged throughout the years, and it's unrecognizable from what it was, and they said that it really needs to start from top to bottom.
And be rewritten.
And rewritten from the get-go, as opposed to...
And I believe that's the only way we're going to deal with this issue of unbridled development. We have to have rules that are in place that people understand, and they can be enforced by the appropriate agency of government.
Looking at some of the capital projects, okay, we did talk about Main Street.
Yep.
We know that we've got a problem with City Dock and flooding.
Yep.
We've got the City Dock master plan that's hanging out there.
Yep.
We've got Hillman Garage.
That's a big one.
Where do you prioritize these, and how do you start to tackle them? Or do you run out of town?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer today, but that answer could potentially change when I get in office and see what I actually have to deal with.
So there's an asterisk after this one.
There's an asterisk, right?
Okay.
Thank you for my writer here. I think that City Dock flooding is increasingly going to be an issue, and it's one that has to be dealt with on the front side. If we wait too long, it's going to be too late, and we're going to have a very, very difficult time addressing it. And the cost to do some of these things, the old saw, pay me now, pay me later. Pay me now, it's sometimes cheaper. Pay me later, I'm going to get my interest and the rest. So I think that's one that needs to be looked at. The garage, I think, is the next one, because if we want to deal with downtown, that garage is crumbling. I mean, everybody knows. And I'm not sure we've got the resources in place in our capital budget to do that project. So we're going to have to take a step back and see how we're going to deal with that, which I think kind of takes to the finances of the city. I'm not sure that we've managed our money as well as we could have. We're borrowing money now to do operational things. Well, it's like if you go to the grocery store, but you stop by the bank with your ATM card to get a loan before you go to the grocery store. So those monies we borrow should be used for capital projects. And, we've got an aging infrastructure. Nobody wants to talk about this, but some of the water delivery systems in the city.
I'm laughing because I remember when Dave Cordell ran for mayor against Josh Cohen. He was a Democrat. I remember Dave kept running around with a briefcase in one hand and a rusty old corroded pipe section in the other hand, saying that this is what's lying underneath our city.
He's right. I mean, some of the water pipes under the streets are aging. They're even older than we are.
We? I'm a spring chicken here. What's hey, let's shift gears a little bit. Public housing.
Yep.
Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis. And there's a lot of misnomers going on about what it is. And it is a state chartered organization that is funded by
federal dollars,
grants, federal government and whatnot, but not by the city and not by the state.
Nope.
And they operate independent of the city, independent of the state and the feds.
Yep.
However, the city appoints the Board of Commissioners.
That's correct.
And they provide city services to the residents, police and fire and EMS and water and whatnot. But we've got a problem with public housing. We're seeing that the decrepit conditions that we're seeing crime is certainly an issue. Where do you see the city's role in that going forward?
Well, I know there's been some discussion about privatization of public housing, and I'm really not a fan of privatization because
neither are the residents.
Well, I don't blame them. Mm-hmm. I mean, let me give you an example. A couple of states have tried to privatize the prison system. That's a public function. You put a private entity in there, and the profit motive sometimes degrades the service that they're providing for the institution. And I'm afraid that the same thing could apply here with public housing. Obviously, we need to address the condition of those buildings for the residents. But I think that's something that we need to work hand in hand, the Board of Commissioners and the federal government.
Well, with declining contributions from the federal government, which appears to be what's going to be happening now, certainly for the next 4 years, how do we address that? I mean, the city doesn't have it.
I know. The state maybe could help in some way if they could free up some cash. But here's the problem. I don't think anybody in city government has taken the time to try to lobby the state or the federal government or their representatives, in this case our U.S. senators and the congressmen, to try to get something done. I haven't seen that happen. That's one of the things that it's an experience that I have, is I know how to look up and ask, look up and and ask.
Yeah.
Somebody at the front of the bus has to be an advocate for those people in the back of the bus. We have two communities here in Annapolis. We have one of affluence and influence and one without. And I'm not sure that city government has really provided for those without. Certainly the ones with influence, and they get things done because they have the affluence and the influence. But the ones without, I'm not sure they're getting the same kind of care and feeding and treatment that they really deserve.
I said that in the podcast, that every town, every city thinks they're unique, but we really are unique in a lot of respects, and one of which is that we're geographically a small city, as important as it is, but we do have those pockets of affluence and poverty that are just on top of each other. If you go to the Giant on Bay Ridge, you have that's serving Bay Ridge, and it's also serving Robinwood, but you have these groups that are just in constant contact with each other. But you have the one group in public housing that, for all intents and purposes, are kind of kept out of sight, out of mind. I bet you that the vast majority of white people or people in these affluent neighborhoods have never driven through Robinwood or Bywater.
I would agree.
Yeah,
one little factoid. I've been told that we have the highest percentage of subsidized housing than any city our size in the nation.
Yeah, there's something
like 30% or 35%.
I think that's a legit. I don't think it's the. It's been confused with saying we have the most public housing, but which is not certainly not
per
true.
Capita.
But if you look at the 38,000 population versus the 1,200 units or whatever it is that they have in the inventory,
the ratios is pretty high.
Is significant.
But this goes to a rant that I think that John made on Annapolis last week, just about the inefficiency of government, and it's that so many of these things have been kicked down the road to deal with later: the finances, the water treatment, the infrastructure, public housing. This is a situation I'm in. I'm at home. I'm trying to get another year out of my car. I'm trying to get another year out of my dishwasher.
Sure.
So I have 5 things that could go, and I'm kicking myself at any given time. Before we were recording, you were saying pay me now, or I guess you said this a few minutes ago, pay me now, pay me later. I'm kind of screwed, but the city's in a worse situation, because at some point, and it's not the fault of Mayor Pantelides or Mayor Cohen or Moyer or going back through the history, it's just an accumulation of all these things that someone's going to be holding the bag on this at some point when they all start collapsing.
It's an accumulation because previous administrations have kicked the can down the road and not dealt with those issues when they were before us, at an appropriate time. I'm not pointing fingers at any one particular administration, but
I think they've all had cans they've been able to kick. I don't think anybody's.
And that's the most used phrase I've heard to describe our city government is kick the can down the road, because we have that constantly.
Well, it's easy to do that.
No, I do it in my personal life too.
And people do. They're reluctant to make the decisions. We have needs, and we've had needs all along, and you may have to put some aside to deal with the more important ones. And I'm not sure we've done that.
The frustration that I think a lot of residents here and any other city have is that they don't know why the decisions are being made that they're being made. And that comes down to transparency.
Yep.
And every administration across the country always says, I'm going to increase transparency, and it very rarely happens, because that's just the nature of deal making. It's the nature of the process, is that if John and I want to agree to do something, we're going to have it take it offline and then come back, but then people see that as that it's lack of transparency.
I think it's human nature too. There was a bill before the council last week about allowing theater use in specific zoning. And the first question that came to my mind, being the cynic that I am, is like, okay, so why? Why is
this issue coming up? Who's pushing?
Are we talking about, is there a personal theater in a business that may want to have 40 people see their clients? Are we talking about community theater? Or is there one piece of land that's about to go on sale that AMC is looking to build a megaplex here? And it's unfortunate that is the attitude that I have, and I think a lot of people do. They sit there and just
think you're right.
But he's also a conspiracy theorist, so you got to bear that in mind too. So.
I haven't found a conspiracy that I won't jump into either. But What do you do to increase or to maintain transparency in the Astle administration?
My experience in state government. Our work, the hard work, is done in committee. We have the Sunshine Law. You can't meet on an issue in a back room. That's against the law. So these meetings have to be open to the public. Every single vote that we take in committee is recorded. And you can go back and look and see votes on amendments, votes on bills themselves. I mean, it's all recorded, and anybody can go back. Everything that we do now is live streamed and is also recorded, so you can go back and listen to the testimony, listen to the discussion that the committee has. And I think the same kind of thing ought to apply in city government. You shouldn't be able to take a group in a back room and make a decision, then bring it out and say, well, this is the answer, this is what we're doing. I think the public has a right to be involved, maybe not as active participants in the debate, but they need to be able to listen. And I believe if you're afraid to talk about these things in the public eye, then you don't belong in the game.
This dovetails into who you are as a candidate. So if we look at the 4 candidates for mayor right now, by far, you have the most experience. I mean, even with Mayor Pantelides, who's the second most experienced, he's got 3 years.
There's a chasm difference between those two. I jokingly said I'm waiting for Mike Pantelides to look to Gavin and say, well, you don't have the experience to be mayor. And I'd be like, well, I seem to think that Josh Cohen had said that 4 years ago.
So your experience and your name recognition, so you can look at it 2 different ways. Is the way is saying, well, you're an establishment politician, or you can say, but I also have the experience to know how to ask for money for the state. I know how the process works. So there's a double-edged sword for the position that you're in right now. But by far, you understand how government works, how bureaucracy works to the detriment, but all these issues that other candidates don't. But do you feel that you're able to take the experience you have from the state, kind of, not to go back to the minors, but you're also coming down to a smaller municipality?
Let me first say that I'm not taking this for granted, that because I've been in office as long as I have. And secondly, I don't see myself as an establishment candidate. I've been in the public eye now for 35 years, but at the same time, I had a real life outside. I had a real job, just like every other person in Annapolis. I had to go to work. It was a fun job. I was flying helicopters for a hospital, which is pretty neat. I was getting paid to play, sort of. But
you just heard it here. He's all for pay for play.
But I mean, I had a real job and a real life, and so I think those experiences kind of separate you from the public arena. Talk about entrenched congressmen. Do they ever come home to their districts? They're locked in Washington. The thing I like about the Maryland General Assembly is that every day when I left, I'm among the people I represent. When the session concluded, I'm with the people I represent. So there was never...
You walked home.
I walked home.
Yeah, I never thought about that, for better or for worse. Yeah, you got to walk back home through the people.
There was no wall. I see them in the grocery store. I see them at the doctor's office. I see them at the gas station. So I'm not walled off from my constituents. And so in that vein, I don't see myself as an establishment candidate. Now, the experience. City government works a little bit differently in some respects. The process is a little bit different than the process and the rules that we operated by in the state level. But some things don't change, and that's people and relationships. And I think the experience that I have in building coalitions and working with people is something that would stand me in good stead as the leader of the city. I've said this before, and I'll just reiterate, the mayor is actually, by the charter, the president of the council. The mayor has one vote, just like every other member of the council. Only the mayor's supposed to vote first. Well, I don't mind voting first because that sort of sets the leadership tone. So I think my experience in working with people is going to benefit if I'm successful.
Let me, I must switch to, lately a lot of the talk has been with the opioid crisis in Maryland.
Yeah.
And just last week, County Executive Shu had said that he's going to go forward and sue these doctors that are supplying pills and manufacturers and distributors and whatnot there. The numbers are staggering coming from Anne Arundel County. We're the 3rd highest jurisdiction in the state of Maryland as far as heroin overdoses and deaths, behind Baltimore City and Baltimore County. The city has obviously been involved. We've been impacted by it. The city is involved with trying to control it or stem that tide. What do you see that we can do to help keep our youth, our kids, and this is out of both parts of Annapolis, the affluent and influential ones as well as the ones that don't have it, out of
the opioid epidemic. Let me try that again. The opioid epidemic affects all classes. I mean, it runs the gamut. It's not just in the class that doesn't have it. I think there are a couple of things. You know, we did a thing in the General Assembly, a bill that passed, which said that you're a doctor and you're prescribing opioids to a patient. You have to enter that into a website. It's on record. So I'm going to point to him.
Please,
this time. John. So
he's the one
you
with the
go
problem.
in, and your doctor writes you a prescription for painkillers, opioid drugs. Now you go to another doctor, and you try to get another prescription. Well, now that doctor is required by law to go on that website, and he sees, you've
already got a dozen.
You already got
pills.
some, and so he better refuse, because what will happen, the doctor's actions are going to be monitored as well, and so we're going to know which doctors are prescribing and the numbers. I just saw a thing, actually it was on Steve Shue's press conference. This woman said that her kid got started on painkillers.
I know the New England Journal of Medicine said that 70% of today's opioid addicts got their start with a prescribed painkiller.
Yeah.
Which is staggering.
And so when you look at what the doctors prescribe, the numbers of pills that they prescribe, I think it's excessive. It's just my opinion. I mean, I've had some procedures done where I was given the prescription for pain pills, and then I decided the pain wasn't that bad. I could deal with it with, an aspirin or...
For crying out loud, you're a Marine.
Yeah, I know.
I would expect nothing less.
That's right.
I want to bike it in for a
We don't need
hangnail.
no stupid painkillers.
So, yeah. But... And I never filled the prescriptions because I just, but the doctor was pretty free about writing that prescription down here. You feel a little pain. Well, if we become so soft that we can't endure a little pain, I think suing the doctors and the drug manufacturers may be a potential solution, but I think that's going to require action of the General Assembly. I'm not sure that the county council has the ability to do that unilaterally just with Anne Arundel County.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the answer to that, but that's I suspect.
Well, certainly something I think we need to look at.
But it's a terrible problem, and we're killing people at an incredible rate. So I don't know.
So like you said, you've had a long career in the legislature and with your job of flying helicopters and getting paid for it. So why not just get a beach house somewhere? Why are you running for mayor?
It's a good question, and it's one.
He's got a house and he wants to go to the
See?
mountains. Not the beach. She's not a beach
I've
guy.
been asked that question a number of times.
Your wife? What the hell are
My
you
wife-
doing?
Yeah, so why don't you just retire? I'm doing this because I love this city. I've been here now for over 40 years. Bought my house in 1971.
Wow.
I raised 2 kids here in the city. My youngest is buried here. This is my home. I'm not going away. But I care about the city. As a state legislator, on a couple of occasions, I've tried to reach down and provide some assistance to a couple of issues to the city. And I never got any cooperation. And I finally came to the realization that if I was going to make the kind of changes that I wanted to see in my community, I was going to have to drive the bus. And so I don't see stepping from position as a senator to a mayor as a step down. In some ways, it's a step up. As a legislator, I got 1 vote. I'm one of 188 people. As a mayor, I may only have 1 vote on the council, but I've got a more powerful voice that I don't have necessarily as a member of the Senate. So I don't see it as a step down.
I'm interested. You said that as a legislator, you had seen a lack of cooperation between the state level and the city level. And with the exception of Dean Johnson for 1 term,
Yeah.
and Mayor Pantelides for 1 term at this point, it's all been a Democrat-controlled legislature versus a Democrat city council. Why would there not be cooperation there? I mean, we're seeing some more cooperation now that there's a Republican in Government House and Calvert Street.
First of all, I'm not sure that city elections ought to be partisan. The issue of Main Street doesn't have a partisan label on it. I mean, it's a need that needs to be met. It's a decision that needs to be made.
Those water pipes aren't Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, that's right. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. And so the parties have this incentive, imperative, I guess is even a better word. We got to win. We got to win. So what's it mean? Now, I told somebody on the street today, party affiliation doesn't necessarily indicate quality. You could be a Democrat and not have the quality to be a successful office holder. You could be a Republican and not have the quality. But because your party seems to have an edge, suddenly you're in office and you're expected to make decisions. I mean, how about the chairman of the county council now? There's a guy.
We'll cut your mic off at that. Well, I'll tell you.
I didn't call the name out.
No, if you say Gracio, that would be indiscreet.
Yes,
so
don't say Gracio.
I'll throw that out. Well, I'll tell you what I want. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to wrap up here. Best of luck in the election. Obviously we're seeing the Astle signs popping up.
And I cannot open my Facebook
around
without
town.
seeing you come up like every other post. So well done.
Like mushrooms in the night. That's my signs. They're coming up. It was a planned thing. People kept saying, "Where are your signs? Where are your signs?" In any of the elections I've been involved in, I never get the signs out until we're like maybe 3 to 4 weeks out.
Is that because of the short-term memory of the voters?
I mean, suddenly they stop seeing your signs. When they crop up, all of a sudden it's like, wow, his signs are up.
Just an explosion.
Yeah, as opposed to getting immune to them, driving by, it's like, oh yeah, there's that whatever sign. Interesting.
Yeah.
This should be like former County Executive Leopold, just have one sign. You could save some money.
It's a lot of waving, though.
One sign. Well, he didn't have anybody else helping him either, and the sign never said what he was running for.
Yeah, it was just a.
But he had a nice wave.
It was a cost-saving measure. It was a cost-saving measure.
And speaking of that, that's something that we're going to employ in my campaign is waving.
Waving?
Yeah, I've done it.
I just laughed and he just shot me a look, so I just stopped laughing.
No, I didn't mean to shoot you a look. He shot you a look.
I get the same look from my wife. So that's...
No, sign waving. People drive by. So maybe they didn't have a sign in their neighborhood, but here's one in their face as they're coming down the street. And it shows, particularly for the volunteers, they're the ones that really care about signs. It shows that you're actually doing something.
Well, you guys certainly are everywhere, and I want to thank you again for stopping in today and talking with us.
I hope you guys invite me back again.
We're going. Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully that we will. We'll have you guys back, and we're going to be having our debate coming up in a few weeks. John's doing the organizing on that,
and just to get into a little bit of business, on the 19th of September. That is the primary election, and if you are registered in the City of Annapolis as a Democrat or Republican, get out and vote. And get this turnout that's been dismal for years and years and years, and really show the world what Annapolis can do. We need to do better than that. And 19th of September, we do not have any early voting in the city.
No, we do not in the city. But let me just say, it's to the people who are listening, it's your government. And you have to take some responsibility to ensure that it's what you want. Vote.
All right. Leave it at that. Thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate that.
Senator John Astle.
And we're doing something we never ever do. We have a little bit of tricks of editing. So we will record a bunch of intros and outros at the same time and interview later or interviews before. But this time we did everything in order. So we sat down to the intro. The senator came in, and then he just left a couple seconds ago.
Absolutely.
So I have no editing to do.
Okay, the plan for this outro was for me to talk about my thoughts on the entire race for the Annapolis City, and that's all screwed up there. I need to rethink this whole mayor thing again now that we've spoken with all 4 candidates for mayor. And I think that's probably screwed up everybody else too. So go back and listen to the other 3 episodes, including this one, because we've got Gavin Buckley was up first, then Nevin Young, and then Mike Pantelides, and now Senator John Astle.
I'm going to tear down this fourth wall completely and be completely candid. So before we started all this back in the beginning of the summer, before we interviewed everyone, privately we chatted saying, it's going to be tight, but I thought it was John. John's going to run away with John Astle, and he certainly is formidable. But I think the other candidates have really upped their game too. So this is going to be a really good race because I don't know right now. They're all really strong. They're all stronger than I thought they would be. And I think...
I think we've got to put some more thought on that. But I can talk a little bit, and I'm not going to waver on my aldermanic prognostications or my guesses there. But so I'll just throw this out here, and I'll just go one by one and see if you agree with me.
As far as the
alderman races.
Okay, go.
What's going to happen? Ward 1, I think Ellie Tierney defeats Joe Budge in the primary, and she'll defeat Larry Clausen in the general election.
I agree. I think it's be close, but I agree.
Okay, and I think Ellie and Joe will be very close in the primary. Ward 2, Fred Paone won over Kurt Riegel last election by 54 votes or something along those lines. I think that Kurt is going to take it this time. I think that he's been actively out there campaigning. I think that Fred has been a little bit lax on the campaigning. And I think, part of that is due, he had a hip replacement and whatnot, so there's a physical limitation right now as he's going through the recovery there, but I think that's going to hurt him. And I think because it was so close before, I think Kurt's going to take that one.
Okay, another close one. So I don't know if I agree or disagree, but I think that's too close to call for me.
Okay.
Fred's got he's got the strength of an incumbency.
Yeah. Ward 3, going on an absolute limb here, and I'm going to say Rhonda Pindell Charles is going to take that.
Sure.
Okay. Ward 4. I think Sheila Finlayson will also win this. We've got two Democrats there, but I bet you it's going to be, and I'm putting my fingers together really close in front of the microphone right now, I think it's going to be a lot closer than anybody ever thinks with Sheila Finlayson, because I think Tony Strong Pratt is a very, very formidable candidate.
Yes, she is.
And Sheila is still going to win, but I think it's going to be very, very tight. And Tony Strong Pratt, I think you'll see a little bit more of her in the future. Ward 5, which is sort of the Hunt Meadow Ward and Pitt Moy Rec Center, I think that Mark Rodriguez will take this race. He's been campaigning for quite a long time. He's been active in the community. He's been helping Alderman Littman for a year and a half now, doing constituent service and everything else. James Appel, it could be a dark horse that comes in there, but I don't see it. I think Mark Rodriguez will take that by a fairly significant margin. Mm-hmm. Where are we at? 5-6? I think Shanika Henson is going to take that over Dewan Gay. I think Dewan's got a little bit of name recognition over Shanika, but I think Shanika just really understands the issues of the city and really resonates with her, and she's able to discuss them and come up with a strong plan on how she wants to do it. He has
impressed the hell out of me, though. He's 19, 20 years old. He is one to watch. He is amazing.
Without a doubt. I mean, this I don't think is Dewan's time, but no, Dewan has time coming.
That is a smart kid, and I don't mean to denigrate him by calling him a kid. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that he should not win, but I just don't think he will. But he's definitely one to watch there on that Ward 6 and beyond. You may see him pop up in the school board or something like that as well. It'll be interesting to follow his career as it goes on.
And 7's the most interesting race, I think, out of all of these.
Ward 7, I think that Rob Savage is going to take Alexis Villegas in the primary by a fairly significant vote.
I don't think it's going to be as close as you think it is.
I think it'll be fairly significant. I think that Rob has been around. He's got the name recognition and everything else. Alexis seems to be doing almost like she's reading a textbook, I think, on how to run a campaign. And I think she seems a little bit out of touch with the needs or the desires of the ward. Rob, I think, is a little bit more.
I don't understand Ward 7 in general anyway. That's hard to get the personality of Ward 7 is hard to get get a touchstone on. That doesn't even make sense, but you know what I mean. It's hard to figure them out, what their identity is, what they care about.
Well, that's where Dave Frankel comes in. And I think David Frankel will ultimately win this in the general election. He is the Republican candidate. I think Rob Savage is going to be seen as a one issue. One-trick pony, if you will. He's very focused on the environment. His editorial on the Capitol last week was very, very focused environment. And I think David has a little bit more of a broader appeal and a broader vision of the ward on that. Ward 8, that's you.
That was me the first time ever.
That was you.
First time ever.
Ward 8 is my big upset. And Senator Astle thought, really? When I told him this too. But I think Bumper Moyer is going to take Ross Arnett in the primary by just a little bit. And I think that's because of Bumper's history. He's grown up there forever. Both of his parents served as aldermen and mayors of the city. I think a lot of people are going to see it as Bumper's time. And I think they're going to have the longtime Eastporters are going to find it hard to not vote for Bumper Moyer. However, come the general election, I think Julie Mussog is ultimately much more qualified than Bumper Moyer, and I think she will ultimately win that seat by a large margin.
Let me say this too, Let me just say this too, is that, and by the way, let me preface this by saying that I'm not running for anything, I don't work for anybody, so I am not trying to preserve anyone's feelings because I don't care. I will say that if you look across the slate of aldermanic candidates, there's not one person there who doesn't deserve at least a shot at this, because they are all remarkably capable. There's not even one when I turn off the mic that I would say, well, except for, I'm being honest, every single one of these aldermanic candidates is pretty impressive. I don't think there's anyone that really slacks.
That is an impressive group of 18
I'm
individuals.
Serious. I'm not just saying that to kiss ass. I'm really not. I think it's a great sign for the city where you have so many people who are so qualified, who are willing to fight for that position to serve the city. I really do.
Yeah.
I think we are going to have a surprise guest in a couple of weeks here who's going to help break down all of the electoral information and kind of give their professional opinion about what they're doing, how they're doing it, the way people are going to vote, and we're going to have a really fun one with that. So we'll do that for the aldermanic and the mayoral election. But if you haven't listened to all the aldermanic interviews, go back and listen to those. If you haven't listened to all of the mayoral candidate interviews, go back and listen to those. And if you want to find us on Facebook, we have a group, we have a page. You can find us on Twitter at MD Krabs Podcast. We're at Tim Hamilton 47 at Annapolis. You can send us an email at info@themarylandcrabs.com. Find us at themarylandcrabs.com. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Rate us, comments, blah, 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 all that stuff. And subscribe.
See you next week.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.